My wife held my hand in the delivery room, whispering, "I love you." But when the nurse said, "The baby's blood type doesn't match yours," her grip tightened. Trembling, I asked, "Whose child is this?" She started hyperventilating because I never thought my life would shatter in a single moment. But there I was, in the hospital delivery room, holding my wife's hand as she brought what I thought was our child into the world. The doctors and nurses moved around us, their voices a distant hum. My wife, Grace, was exhausted but glowing, her hair sticking to her forehead from sweat. She looked up at me, her eyes teary, and whispered, "I love you." I smiled down at her, my heart pounding with joy and relief. "I love you too." Then a nurse walked in, holding a clipboard. She had a polite smile, but something about her demeanor felt off. "Mr. Carter, we need to discuss a small discrepancy in the baby's blood type." My brow furrowed. "A discrepancy?" She glanced at Grace, then back at me. "Yes. We ran a routine test. Your wife's blood type is A, and yours is O, correct?" I nodded, still not understanding where this was going. The nurse hesitated. "Well, the baby's blood type is B." The room felt like it had been sucked into a vacuum. I let out a breathless laugh, confused. "That's not possible." Grace's fingers tightened around mine, her grip suddenly ice-cold. I looked at her. Her face had lost all color. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I turned back to the nurse. "You must have made a mistake." She gave me a sympathetic look. We double-checked. "This is accurate." A lump formed in my throat. "So what does that mean?" The nurse hesitated, then said softly, "It means you are not the father." My entire body locked up. My hand slipped from Grace's. I felt like I had been punched in the chest. I turned to my wife, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Whose child is this?" Grace's breath hitched. Her hands trembled. Her eyes darted around the room as if looking for an escape. I can explain," she finally choked out. The weight of betrayal hit me like a freight train. I felt my fingers curl into fists at my sides. "Explain." I repeated, my voice shaking. "You told me this was my baby. You looked me in the eye, over and over, and swore it was mine." Tears spilled down her face. She was gasping for air now, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "I was going to tell you, but then I found out I was pregnant, and I didn't know what to do." My entire body felt numb. "You didn't know what to do?" My voice cracked. "Who is the father?" Her lips quivered. She looked down at her hands, as if she could will herself out of this situation. Then she whispered a name. "Nick." My world collapsed. Nick. My best friend. My closest friend. The man I trusted like a brother. For a moment, I thought I misheard. I just sat there, staring at her, my brain refusing to process the words. Then the rage started to build. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "Nick?" I repeated, my voice low and dangerous. She nodded quickly, wiping her tears. I didn't mean for it to happen. I stood up so fast the chair screeched against the floor. "How long?" She swallowed hard. "Almost a year." I let out a shaky breath. My hands were trembling. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I might throw up. A year. A full year of lying. A full year of pretending. I turned and walked out of the room. She called after me, her voice desperate. "Please, wait. We can fix this." I didn't stop. I don't remember driving home. I barely remember unlocking the front door. My whole body was running on autopilot, my mind replaying every moment from the last year. The late nights. The unexplained text messages. The time she said she was going out with friends but came home acting strangely distant. All the pieces started falling into place. And I felt like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. I sat in silence for hours, staring at the floor. Then my phone buzzed. "Nick." I let it ring. Then a message popped up. "We need to talk." Talk. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. He had the audacity to ask to talk. After everything. A second message came through. "Please. Just meet me." I had nothing left to lose. So I agreed. The next day, I met him at a small cafe, the same one where we used to hang out like brothers. But this time, I wasn't here as his friend. Nick looked nervous. His leg bounced under the table, and he kept shifting in his seat. "Look, man, I know you're angry," I cut him off. "How long?" He exhaled sharply. "Almost a year." I nodded slowly, gripping my coffee cup so hard I thought it might crack. And you never thought to tell me? He looked away. I wanted to. But then Grace got pregnant, and he trailed off. I felt a cold, bitter laugh escape my lips. And what? You just decided to pretend like nothing happened. Nick ran a hand through his hair. It wasn't like that, it was exactly like that. He didn't deny it. I pushed my chair back and stood up. You're dead to me. His face paled. Please, man, don't do this. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I turned and walked away. I wasn't done yet. I couldn't just walk away from this without consequences. They had betrayed me, lied to me, humiliated me. And I was going to make them regret it. This wasn't over. Not even close. I left the cafe without looking back. My mind was racing, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. But I wasn't done. Nick and Grace had taken everything from me, my trust, my future, my family. I wasn't just going to let them walk away without consequences. I went home and sat in the dark, thinking. I had two options, move on and let them live their lives peacefully, or make them regret every single lie they told me. I chose the second. The next morning, I met with my lawyer. The divorce papers were filed immediately. I wanted nothing from Grace, no negotiation, no compromise. She didn't deserve a single thing from me. But then my lawyer frowned as he looked through some financial records. Mr. Carter, did you know your wife has been making large withdrawals from your joint account over the last year? I froze. How large? He turned his laptop screen toward me. My stomach twisted. Thousands. She had been funneling money out of our savings. My money. I clenched my fists. Where was the money going? My lawyer leaned forward. Some of it was transferred to a private account in her name. But most of it, he hesitated. What? I asked, my voice sharp. He exhaled. It was transferred to Nick. I felt my blood turn to ice. She had been using my hard-earned money to support the man who destroyed my marriage. I forced myself to stay calm. Can we prove this? My lawyer nodded. Absolutely. With this, the court will side with you completely. She'll lose almost everything in the divorce. Good. That was only step one. I thought I knew the full extent of Grace's betrayal. But I was wrong. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. A woman's voice came through the line. Is this Daniel Carter? Who's asking? She hesitated. My name is Rachel. You don't know me, but I think we have something in common. I frowned. And what's that? A long pause. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. I'm Nick's fiancé. I gripped the phone tighter. Fiancé? Yes. Her voice trembled. I just found out about you. About Grace. About everything. I couldn't speak. My mind was struggling to keep up. Nick had a fiancé. He had been cheating on her too. Rachel exhaled shakily. I had a feeling something was wrong for months, but I kept ignoring it. Then last night, I found his old phone. There were messages, pictures, everything. I confronted him, and he finally admitted it. He told me everything. I ran a hand over my face. And what do you want from me? The truth. Rachel and I met the next day. She was just as shaken as I was, eyes red, hands trembling as she stirred her coffee. I feel like an idiot, she admitted. I thought he loved me. I was planning our wedding, and the whole time, he was sneaking around with your wife. I sighed. I know the feeling. She looked up at me. I don't just want to walk away from this. I met her gaze. Neither do I. That's when it happened. A plan formed between us. A way to make both Grace and Nick feel the same humiliation and betrayal they put us through. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice. Rachel and I spent the next few days putting everything together. We both wanted the same thing, justice. We didn't want to lash out recklessly. We wanted to destroy their lives the way they destroyed our trust. First, I gave Rachel copies of the financial records showing Grace had been sending money to Nick. Rachel, in return, showed me texts from Nick's old phone, conversations between him and Grace that proved just how deeply they had betrayed us. They weren't just having an affair. They had planned for Grace to pass off Nick's baby as mine. They had even joked about how I was too trusting to ever figure it out. Reading those messages made my hands shake. But it also made me more determined than ever to see this through. The day Grace was served the divorce papers, she showed up at my house, pounding on the door. When I opened it, her eyes were swollen from crying. "Daniel, please. Can we talk?" I stared at her, my heart ice cold. There's nothing left to say. She wiped her face. "I know I messed up. I regret everything. But please, don't do this. Don't take everything from me." I almost laughed. "Everything? You mean like how you took everything from me?" She sobbed harder. "I don't want to lose you." I shook my head. "You already did." The divorce case was brutal. For her. The financial records proved she had stolen from our joint account to fund her affair. The court ruled that she had committed fraud. She was ordered to pay back every cent she had taken. She also lost all rights to alimony since her infidelity was proven without a doubt. The house? Mine. The savings? Mine. She walked away with nothing. She had destroyed our marriage for Nick, and now, she had to face the consequences alone. While I was handling my divorce, Rachel was handling Nick. She didn't just break up with him, she exposed him. She sent every text message, every picture, every single piece of proof to his friends, family, and even his employer. Nick had built his career on his good reputation. He worked for a family-run company, where loyalty and trust were everything. The moment his bosses saw the proof of what he had done, he was fired. But Rachel wasn't done. She went to his landlord and told him everything. Turns out, Nick's apartment lease was in her name. She kicked him out. Homeless. Unemployed. Reputation in ruins. A month later, I was walking out of a grocery store when I saw them, Nick and Grace. They looked completely different. Nick's clothes were wrinkled. He had dark circles under his eyes. Grace looked just as bad, her hair was messy, and her face was pale. For a second, they just stood there, staring at me. Then Grace took a small step forward. "Daniel," I held up a hand. "Don't." Nick exhaled sharply. "Look, man. I cut him off. You made your choices. And now you're living with them." Grace wiped her eyes. "Can't we just start over?" "Maybe someday," I laughed. "Start over? With you?" I shook my head. "I feel sorry for you. Both of you." Nick clenched his jaw. "You think you won?" I looked at him, calm, steady. "No, Nick. I think you lost." And with that, I walked away. I rebuilt my life. I moved to a new home, found peace, and never looked back. Grace and Nick got exactly what they deserved. No happy ending. No second chances. Justice had been served. And I was finally free.